House also announced today the members of a bipartisan task force that will investigate the shooting. The panel includes 6 Democrats and 7 Republicans. Republican Representative Dave Joyce of Ohio is one of them, and he's joining me today. Representative, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
Your task force has a huge job. You're not only tasked with figuring out why these security failures happened, why was there so much miscommunication, but also suggest changes to prevent it from happening again. Where do you even begin here?
Well, first, I think I'm honored to be asked to be on it by Speaker Johnson and Leader Jeffries, because it's a serious matter that needs serious people on it. And I think we have a good group presently engaged to do that. You have to look at all aspects of this, but most importantly, you have to look at the failures of the presidential protection detail, because this should have never occurred. And the idea that they would let President Trump out on that stage when they already had questions about the person out there is something that needs not only to be answered, but needs to be addressed going forward. Anything that you're going to do outdoors like this is obviously risky because there's a lot of vantage points. You're not going to cover them all, but this one was certainly within the distance. Secondly, you should have had an intel group as well as the counter sniper group that is on the ground. So when a suspicious activity is somebody like this with a rangefinder and somebody like this who's been acting abnormal and sailed a drone over the area beforehand, should have been latched onto early on and followed everywhere he went. You may not be able to arrest him, but you can certainly make sure that he doesn't get a chance to do what he ended up doing here. And lastly, I think the problem that looks to me, and again, I don't have any facts in front of me or the evidence. I look forward to doing those things.
Sure.
But there's an 84-second delay. And that delay seems to me would be when you have counter snipers, their job is to take out counter activity like that. And so there must have been some question as to whether it was friend or foe on that rooftop to them for the delay that took place. And he had to shoot, actually take shots before he was actually engaged by our counter snipers. That was wrong. So that sounds like a failure in preparation.
And you were a prosecutor for over 25 years. You've handled cases similar to this, not exactly, but very similar. How will you use that expertise to inform your investigation as you move forward?
Well, you know, I'm unfortunately one of the last cases I had was a school shooting. 3 kids were killed and 3 wounded, 1 permanently disabled. And I got to tell you, the after-action report of something like that helps prepare the law enforcement teams so that it never occurs again. And that's an important aspect of going forward with this. Obviously, we couldn't stop what happened to President Trump that day, which he's the luckiest man in the world, because if he hadn't moved his head, it would be a whole different outcome. But the fact that he did and he's alive today to speak about it, we at least have the luxury of going back now, figuring out what the problems are in the presidential protective detail, and make sure that those things are all engaged. We're in a position right now where we have 5 living ex-presidents. And so there's, I know I've heard Director Cheadle complaining about they didn't have enough people. They have 4,000 people. And so they have the people, they have the money. It's the training that was taking place and making sure you have the right people in the right place at the right time to make sure this never happens again.
Adding to that, the SWAT team has said it had no contact with the Secret Service before the shooting. As you know, sir, it's very common for law enforcement agencies to talk to each other when there's a rally of this size. Is it too early for you to say the Secret Service is at fault here? How does a miscommunication like this happen?
Well, you know, I don't want to judge anything because I haven't seen any of the facts yet.
Sure.
But in just what you said, that makes no sense. If you're in charge of the detail and you're in charge of the surveillance of all the counter properties, you would know who's on what roof, who's friend, who's foe. Everybody's marked down. The position is locked down. On Friday, you'd have a walkthrough for the Saturday event. So everybody knew where everybody else was supposed to be, and you don't have these type of mistakes. And so that's why it's hard to fathom what took place here and just how bad it was prepped prior to the president getting on board.
And Representative, President Trump has already said he's going back to Butler for what he's calling a big, beautiful rally, despite Presidential Protection Service telling him, don't do that. Don't hold any more open-air rallies. Your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, he's a grown man and he can make his own judgment in what takes place. He just puts himself in a lot more precarious position by being out in public like that, because it's almost a 360 view as to what could take place. It's a much more controlled setting when you're inside an arena or some type of covered stadium.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.